Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and we are back for part 2 of the Sludge Factor, the origin of Cess-Pool. And with me is a new friend. He's calling in from New Jersey. His name is RD, and he's the host of the Series 6 podcast, all about the Galaxy Rangers cartoon. RD, welcome to Joe on Joe.
Thanks for having me, man.
Oh my gosh, thanks for being on.
I'm a big fan. I've been a listener for a while.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's very kind, and I definitely love hearing that. So, RD, tell me all about Galaxy Rangers. What is Series 6 all about?
Series 6 is a podcast where we review each and every episode of The Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers. This is a show that came on between 1986 and 1989. It's really it went under the radar because there were a lot of shows that had a lot of great marketing behind them, and they had toys and stuff like that. So, Galaxy Rangers was a high quality show with low quality toys, and the toys came much later. And actually they're really expensive. They're rare and hard to find nowadays, the Galaxy Rangers toys.
Really?
Yes.
Now,
yes.
What started your love for the Galaxy Rangers? When did you find them? Obviously as a kid, right? Or no?
You could say I was a kid. I was about 13.
75-year-old man. Okay, yeah.
And when the show first came out, I was about 12, 13, and I was in high school, and I met Jay, my partner on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
He's my co-host.
Shout out, Jay.
Shout out, Jay. What's up, buddy? And we've remained friends for all these years, and we've always bonded over Galaxy Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
We've always had a love for sci-fi, and he writes, I write, and our stuff is obviously inspired by it. So we decided to do a podcast on it, and I'm a big fan of podcasts. That's how I found you, Joe.
Oh, thanks, man.
And I kind of learned through my love of podcasts how they should sound, and so we kind of built on that. I think we have a pretty decent podcast on our hands. I mean, from the feedback I've gotten, they've told me that it sounds more professional than it should, which I take as a compliment.
It absolutely is a compliment. How long have you guys been around? How long have you been doing your pod?
We just over a year. We started in June. So yeah, like a year and some change. And we had our anniversary episode. It came super late. But we put out maybe one a month, because we're both busy guys, and
sure.
We have families and stuff and day jobs.
Of course.
So
yeah.
So I really don't know how you can be so prolific. You're putting out one a week, which is I'm astounded by this.
Yeah. Well, so is my wife. Well, it's funny you say that, actually. Now would be as good a time as any to tell Joe on Joe listeners that we have only got about 8 episodes left to go of this iteration of the show. I am nearing the end of the DIC stuff, and we are going to go on a somewhat of a soft hiatus. We're still going to be doing our Patreon episodes, so we're going to be doing Joe on Joe Illustrated, and that's definitely going to stay weekly, but that's a little easier for me to do because it's just me and a microphone talking comic books, and I can do that with my eyes closed. And so patreon.com/Joe on Joe pod, that's still going to be live, and I'm still going to be releasing every 5th or so episode of that onto this main feed, so please keep me subscribed in your podcast catcher. But yeah, when we hit the end of the DIC stuff, we're going to take a little bit of a hiatus from the weekly, because after this would go into the Sergeant Savage stuff and the G.I. Joe Extreme stuff, and I frankly don't have the stomach for that right now. So I love the support. Yeah, I love the support, and I love the community, and we're going to keep going with it. But I'm going to step back from the weekly regular drop. But you'll still see me on Patreon and Instagram and all that stuff. So this is the official announcement. I believe you're episode 8 in the countdown to number 1, RD. So You're sliding
Nice.
in right under the deadline. Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what's next because I think I got some cool ideas for what the show can be and stuff. And remember on the Patreon, it's been there as a goal since day one, and we're almost sort of halfway there. We're very close to halfway there. If we reach a threshold for the monthly Patreon support, we will do live, like Joe. I'm calling it Joe and Joe Theater, and we're gonna do live recordings of actual like comic books, like turn it into a radio play kind of a thing. But we need
cool.
but we need that costs a little bit. Gotta make sure everyone's compensated for their time and effort and energy and stuff. So in order to get there, we need to get there, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, you have.
Yes.
I'm a voice actor, and I will definitely lend you my voice if you want it.
Oh my goodness, you know what? Absolutely, you're not the only one. There was a previous guest, I forget exactly who now, but I absolutely know there was someone else who volunteered for it, and I think that would make I remember who it was. I know exactly who it was, and I think that would make a great part of it to bring in guests of the show and fans of the show to play roles on it. So that's all. Yeah, but that all takes time, effort, and energy. And you're right, doing a weekly regular is doesn't give me time for that stuff. So. But this has been a lovely trip, and there'll be more to say on this as we go further. But I want to talk more about you, RD. Galaxy Rangers. Do you have like the full collection of Galaxy Rangers toys right now, like as an adult?
Absolutely not.
Oh no! Is it that
I don't
that
have
expensive?
one Galaxy Rangers action figure. Yeah, they're more expensive than I'd be willing to pay for them.
Oh, okay.
And they're not that great. I think they were from Galoob.
They were, yeah. I'm looking them up now. They absolutely were from Galoob.
Yeah, I mean the horses were really cool. They looked really nice. They were good sculpts, but the action figures themselves not very posable, not very good likenesses of the way they looked on the show and stuff.
And describe the premise of the show. It's basically cowboys in space, right?
Yeah, it's one of the first space westerns I ever saw, and it actually had the biggest impact on me. So it is. Let me see. It's a brand new team of rangers of space explorers. They're like space cops, and they're new to this whole space travel thing. So that's the impression that I was given by the writer, by one of the writers of the show. He was actually on our most recent episode.
Oh,
episode 16.
That's awesome. That's very
Dan
cool.
Fiorella. Yeah. No,
Nice.
it was a really special episode. Like Blossom.
Yeah. And you guys talked about the dangers of drugs.
we talked about a lot of stuff, man. It was fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Here I'm looking on eBay, and we've got an unopened horse, Triton Galaxy Rangers, $250 plus $30 shipping. Now it is still in the box and stuff. Although,
yeah, I mean,
wait a minute. This seller says it's unopened, but then some of the pictures Triton's opened. So I don't think this is an unopened box. Oh, it says open. I'm sorry. Does say used and open, but it's still in the box. So is Triton the main horse?
Triton is Goose's horse.
Okay.
So there are four of them. The Goose is like the coolest character. He has his power is he has bio defenses. So like if he gets shot with something, the next time he gets shot, he's immune to it.
Oh, that's great. That's a very useful power.
If he gets thrown in water, he touches his badge and he'll grow gills and fins and stuff.
Oh wow! So are the Rangers like cybernetic or what are they?
They're human, but they have an implant in their brain, and they all have innate abilities to some degree or another. But the implant amplifies it by 100-fold or whatever.
Oh, that's crazy. And the horses are fully robotic, right?
Yes. And there's a lot of artificial intelligence. Each horse has its own individual AI. So they're intelligent. They can have conversations with their horse.
Yes, I think that's what every cowboy thought he could do back in the day. So it's nice to see that come to fruition in the future. And it does. It's in the far future, right?
Yeah,
or is it alternate reality, or what is it?
It's only supposed to be 100 years or so in the future.
Oh,
So
I love it.
yeah, so like stuff wasn't too different, but we ended up getting hyperdrives from these aliens that needed help or whatever.
Oh, okay.
And
then from their hyperdrive
so it kind of like
technology,
it kind of thrust us into the into the intergalactic network of things.
That's awesome. Now, who are the bad guys on that show? Like G.I. Joe fights Cobra. Who do the Galaxy Rangers fight?
There are a lot of bad guys, but the main one, the one that kind of gets the whole thing going, is the Queen of the Crown. And she's basically this chick in a long robe, in a black bodysuit.
Speak slower. Speak slower.
And it's hard to tell exactly what her powers are. I think she's like a psychic, and she can also do force lightning and stuff. But she has these minions. They're like they're stormtroopers that look like robots and they sound like robots, but I don't think they're robots.
Oh, wow.
That's actually come into question a lot because we see them die often.
Really?
So,
okay.
Yeah, the show's pretty dark. There's a lot of I mean, it was made for kids. I've heard it described as an adult sci-fi show that was disguised as a kid's show.
It was made for kids by sadists.
Yes. So it's I mean, I think that's why it had such a big impact on me, and like I've always carried my love for the show over the years, even though I haven't done anything about it until now.
No, I love it, and I think what you're doing is exactly it's the kind of thing that fueled this show, Joe on Joe. It's what I think podcasting gives a lot of people, and the internet in general, YouTube and all that stuff. It gives so many people,
I agree,
the opportunity to express their love and frankly, like, give thanks to the people that helped shape their childhood, because that's really what you're doing. I'm sure when you had that writer on, like, I'm sure he loved hearing you guys talk so reverently about the show.
Oh, absolutely. By the way, shout out Dan Fiorella. That's the name of the writer.
Well, shout out Dan, absolutely, for sure. And your co-host name on that. What's his name again?
His name is Jay.
And you guys have been friends since grade school, bonding over this.
Yeah, since high school, the beginning of high school.
That's awesome.
So whenever we talk, it always comes up. So I was like, something has to be done about this.
I'm telling you, that's the other thing that all this stuff does. That, like, when you're 10, 9, 10, 11, 12, that era, 13, it cements in you, and then 20 years later, 30 years later, however old, you're literally, our Thanksgiving dinner this year, someone brought up that I had the G.I. Joe podcast, and so we talked a little bit about G.I. Joe, but there were people at this table who were wonderful, and we made great new friends, but they were like, G.I. Joe? Oh my God, and the conversation launched into G.I.
Awesome.
Joe and Jem and She-Ra and everyone there. Yeah, it was great, and it was just this moment of, we were all talking about something that touched us when we were 10 years old that didn't pull up in a Chevy van.
Sounds weird.
Yeah, right. But it was a real genuine moment, and I love it. And I think that's what pods like ours and G.I. Joeberg and all that stuff. I think that's what this stuff does for us.
Yeah, we don't waste an opportunity to make pop culture references in the podcast, and I noticed you don't do it either.
No, try not to. I mean, that's what life is. I always, sometimes I think, like, 200 years ago, were people sitting around the fire being like, making, like, I don't know, Shakespeare references, or like, oh, you're such a puck, like, don't, like, things like that. Like, they must have, right? Like, they must have.
Or like thousands of years ago, like, Neanderthals saying, remember that time Grok got impaled by a boar?
Yeah, don't be a Grok. Or the big comet's gonna get you. Oh yeah, the big comet that shows up every day at the same time, rotates around the planet, gives us light, and then disappears at night. Yeah, that one. Oh, today's a very special episode of The Sun. I get it. Yeah, like, this stuff, it had to be, because the human instinct to reference a communal source, that is not new,
Yeah.
So it's on a massive scale now, obviously with TV and social media and movies and all that stuff. But the concept to want to connect to someone through a communal reference and a kind of a side joke of like boy, he's no Chaucer, like something like that. People must have been doing that. There's no way they weren't.
Yeah, there's no question in my mind.
Awesome. Well, before we go on, let's hear a quick word from one of our communal sponsors.
Joe and Joe listeners know that I love comic books, G.I. Joe, pop culture, and my wife and dogs are pretty great too. I also love learning how people get to where they're at and where they're going. All of that comes together over at the Dreamer Comics podcast, except for my family stuff. That'd be really weird. Omar Spahi interviews someone from the comic industry every episode, and they break down the journey that creator took to get from reading comics to creating them. Comic luminaries like Jim Valentino, Ross Ritchie, Kyle Higgins, and so many more can be found at DreamerComicsPodcast.com or find them anywhere you get your podcasts. Everyone has a dream. Learn how to make yours a reality.
So, RD, one of the things you and I are talking about is you want to get me on a show, on an episode of Series 6, and I really want to do it. So let's make sure that this is me saying out loud and on the pod, so we publicly make it happen.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to have you on a future episode.
Cool.
It's happening.
And I am not. Galaxy Rangers is one of those. There's a level of like pop culture that I'm aware of, but never really got into, and that's definitely Galaxy Rangers. I've seen the box art for the DVDs. I remember seeing the cartoon, but don't really remember watching it. So there's a lot I don't know. So I'm actually really excited to learn about it.
Yeah, something that I've learned about the show is that it's better than I remembered.
Mm-hmm.
Because I dissect every episode, so as I'm going through the episode, I'm like, wow, this is actually pretty good writing, and most of the time the animation is great too. There were different teams that worked on the show, but you could tell the difference. You could tell when they switch up.
Oh, that's awesome. I feel like I'm talking to a mirror self in New Jersey. We're on the same wavelength, man. This is great. Well, today we're on Joe and Joe. We're watching The Sludge Factor Part 2. Now, this is the pickup from the origin of Cess-Pool, which in the opening of the show, we're going to get a little bit of catch-up. So we're going to find out what happened last time, and we'll hear that. But are you all ready to dig into this Sludge Factor Part 2 with us?
Oh, yeah. I've got my sunglasses on.
Oh, okay, good. Well, listeners, before we jump in, remember to follow us on social media at Joe and Joe Pod. That's on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Go to patreon.com/Joe and Joe Pod. See how you can help support the Joe and Joe podcast. And most importantly, go to @Galaxy_Rangers on Twitter and @RD_Blade on Twitter and see what's happening with the Series 6 podcast. There you can find them at series6podcast.com, and I'm sure you could find them on iTunes and all your podcast catchers, right? You guys are available everywhere.
Yeah, we're on iTunes as well. We make a promise to our listener that if they follow us and if they subscribe and rate and review us on iTunes, we'll do something special for them.
Oh my goodness!
Nobody ever takes us up on that. So,
well, I'm gonna take you up on it as soon as we get off the show. You watch. I'm gonna absolutely. First I'm gonna listen, so my rating is genuine, but I'm sure I'm gonna love it. So this is awesome. All right, listeners. Well, here we go. We're gonna get started with this episode and ready to hit play on your DVDs. Here we go. All right, so we start with a little bit of a catch up from last episode.
In our last episode, a con artist
what I just saw, it looks like the aircraft carriers, the headquarters. Is it the Joe headquarters?
No, that wasn't the Joe headquarters. That was a just this random a chemical factory. So this guy's Cess-Pool COC. That's the other thing, honestly. So I don't know if you're RD, if you're that familiar with the DSC stuff, but this is like they farmed out the production of the show to DIC. So they were making this in Canada, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is supposed to be a recap for the kids who missed the first episode, and they've only done a handful of two-parters, but when they do, they're not very good. The recaps aren't very good. And
Yeah,
they're not.
I gotta agree with you.
Yeah, and it's happening here too. Like,
Prices for his stolen food.
they're not really telling you what's going on. They're just eating up, I guess, costly animation time, because the more they use animation from the previous episode, the less money they have to spend on this episode, right?
Uh-huh.
So, like, their recaps, the voiceover, the voice actor who does the recap is always bad. And then the actual descriptions of, like, filling you in, it's just wasting time. And that's what you got here. It's like,
that's so slick.
yeah, like it is. I mean, I guess it's a
Well
good way to
done,
save
DIC.
money, but yeah, it is. It makes for rough viewing. But so, listeners, usually we let the recaps fill our listeners in of what happened last episode, but they did a terrible job. So basically, the CEO of this chemical company who was going to make chemicals to help plants grow, he actually was toxifying the atmosphere, right? And Cobra was there, and they busted up. They were going to steal his secrets, and G.I. Joe and Cobra got into a fight. And frankly, it was Flint's fault. Flint shot the place up, knocking the CEO into a vat of chemicals, very much like the Joker and Batman. And
Okay.
they thought he died. So in a really creepy scene back at Joe headquarters, Flint and one of the other, I forget who it was, one of the other members of the G.I. Joe Echo Force, they were watching videotape footage of it and laughing as if it was funny that time the guy died.
Oh my goodness.
It was awkward, Artie. It was real awkward. So it turns out, though, of course, he didn't die. He actually survived it, but he became Cess-Pool. And it was a big reveal on that episode, and it was actually really good. Like, it was really well handled, I think, because he wears a mask the whole episode, and at the end he pulls it off, and he's like, "I'm deformed. I'm a deformed CEO." Blah, blah,
and he's got
blah, 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 blah.
he's got that wheeze when he talks.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's yucky.
Yeah, George Lucas heard that wheeze and was like, "Wait a minute, let's use that for a Jedi killer. I got an idea. Hold on a second." And a couple of the Joes were about to get destroyed at a junkyard in a car crusher, and they escaped. But so now it's just we're getting a fight in a junkyard between the Sludge vehicles and the Joes.
Okay, now we just saw the helicopter crash, and you can see that it's one of those ringed helicopters, those toys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like when the
It was like their
propeller
battle-
stopped as it hit the ground.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
They-
it was like their
They were
battle.
really using the toys as
They
models.
really do. That's the funny thing. Like, obviously, that's their battle copter thing, and you use the ring to stabilize the plastic and also to like stabilize the toy. But you would never have that on a real helicopter.
No.
No, but it translates into the animation. So
And
yeah.
it wouldn't be lime green either.
No, it wouldn't. So that's Ozone. Ozone's escaping. Like, the other thing too is this is kind of like the origin of the Echo Force, Echo Warriors, and like Ozone and Sludge and Cess-Pool and all that stuff. But this was
Okay.
not their first appearance. A previous
Now,
episode used
is
them because they
Is Flint part of the Eco Force?
he is. Yes, this is Flint version 3 technically. And this is the
I'm gonna
he's-
call him Flores Flint.
Yes, you're exactly right. He is the fluorescent version of Flint. And he's from 1991. He came in a bright green outfit that I guess it would camouflage if you're fighting in a cesspool of toxic waste, but it seems kind of limiting to me.
He has a helmet too,
He does. Yeah, well, they should though. That actually makes sense because all the eco warriors. I mean, they are all fighting toxic waste and stuff. The eco warriors. It was Clean Sweep and Flint and Ozone, and they kind of led the charge against Cess-Pool and the Sludge Viper and the Toxo Viper. And in a cool bit of stretch, usually when they did these sub teams, they only lasted 1 year. But in the next year, the Eco Warriors also had a line with Barbecue, and then their Deep Six had a character in the Eco Warriors, and they also introduced the Toxo Zombie for Cobra.
All right. Targeting control
Oh.
still work.
was that the no? That was one of the modern ones. They did like zombie vipers.
They may have done Zombie Vipers modern age era too. Yeah, I'm not sure. My modern Joe knowledge is a little lacking. I'm stuck in the past, unfortunately, RD. So what's your connection to G.I. Joe? So we talked a lot about your love for Galaxy Rangers. Where did their G.I. Joe love fall into your life?
Well, I mentioned all those other cartoons that were kicking Galaxy Rangers' ass, and G.I. Joe was one of them.
Totally.
G.I. Joe was one of them, and I loved G.I. Joe. I mean, when after the movie, it disappeared for a while, and then they came back with
these
with the DIC produced
Yeah,
ones.
yeah. So we're gonna go to commercial. We'll be right back. Hold on.
Today's file card features on the G.I. Joe Rescue Trooper, codenamed Lifeline. His file name is Edwin C. Steen. His primary military specialty is the medic in birthplace, Seattle, Washington. Lifeline was a paramedic with the Seattle Fire Department for 5 years before he discovered that EMS personnel who were disabled while giving aid off duty were not eligible for pensions. In his mind, rescue personnel were never off duty. He decided to make his status permanent by enlisting in the Army as a corpsman. Quote, "Elite units always take care of their own. The Joes are no exception. The troops have to know that if something really heavy comes down on them and they're in no condition to walk out of that mess, somebody is going to have the heart to wade in and extricate them. That somebody is Lifeline." Lifeline is fantastic. First of all, he literally wears his job on his leg. He's got the word rescue on his leg. That's everything you need to know. But his color scheme is perfect. Red and white, obviously the Red Cross colors, but it tells you everything about that character. So visually, it is perfect. I'm looking at some of the other editions of Lifeline, and the only ones that seem true are the red and white ones. I think it's great. I love they gave him the green glasses, because remember Doc had green glasses. It's like medical troopers only get green glasses in G.I. Joe world. And the biggest draw for Lifeline, of course, was that he was a pacifist. So every time he showed up on the cartoon, it was always about him not wanting to pick up a gun, not wanting to assault someone, but he's absolutely going to put himself in the thick of it to help his teammates. He's like the perfect teammate, the guy that you need on your team, because he will do absolutely everything for you to win and still not sacrifice any of his own ideals. He also came with very cool silver handgun and backpack, but his rescue case had a gas mask. And this was important because it was actually an accessory that you used on another toy. And that was really rare for the carded figures. Usually any accessories on them fit that character. This was an accessory that would only really be used in conjunction with another action figure, and that's really cool. It's very subtle, and kids probably never even realize that, but it's very, very cool. I like it so much. So Lifeline, Edwin C. Steen, we salute you.
So yeah, so they disappeared after the movie, and then you found them again?
Yeah, after the movie, I saw the DIC ones come out, and I lost interest actually. But you know, I'm checking it out. I'm giving it a shot for old time's sake.
Yeah, I think a lot of people lost interest with the DIC stuff. You know, we've talked about this kind of ad nauseum on this show, where there's just not enough money pumped into them to be animated well. You know, they had some decent plots and stuff and some adventures that were fine. You know, they weren't terrible, but between like the rougher animation and then this sillier, more cartoony aspect, especially in the first season of DIC, I will say the second season of DIC, which is what we're in now, it is a big improvement on storylines. Like they're taking it a little more seriously. Right? Yes, yeah.
The writing changed between the movie and DIC.
Yeah,
right?
And they all. Yes, it did. Yeah. There were some writers that crossed over, but I have a feeling that was just like older scripts that they reused.
Let's get out of here.
Yeah, and I noticed the voice acting isn't as good. I mean, they have Chris Latta in it, which is fantastic.
Yeah, Chris Latta comes back, and I think the Baroness was back, and Destro might have done like one episode, but for the most part, it's all new voice acting. Which also doesn't help. Certainly doesn't help the continuity, but it also doesn't help the characterizations, because you're talking about like what was it? Wally Burr was the voice director for the original G.I. Joe stuff, and the voice acting in the original G.I. Joes were just dynamite. You know, like there was just this level of energy and effort to it that it does not come through on a lot of these. Not all of them, certainly. There's some that are fine. But specifically whom I think... Oh, Scoop on the DIC, who was a major character for a lot of episodes, is not... It's hard to listen to. Like, there's just no energy and effort being put into that vocal
It's a bummer.
performance. Yeah, it's a real bummer. It's like,
and I think voice directing comes in it plays a big role in that.
Yeah, totally. And that's the late great Wally Burr. Like there's legendary stories about him just slave driving the guys to like do it again, thinking that if they didn't leave exhausted, they weren't putting in a good day. And it showed on G.I. Joe. And certainly I think Chris Latta brought that work ethic to this, because his Cobra Commander is always amazing.
No question.
So we see here the effects of toxic pollution on the world. Like, it's going to kill all the crops. The world's going to starve. Like, life's going to be terrible. I think there's a lot of parallels to what we're seeing. Not necessarily that we have a scarred, deformed, Toxic Avenger-esque level, Cobra guy ruining everything. But we literally just last
using
week
poop as a weapon.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they're shooting sludge out of those guns.
Yeah, and sludge is,
and that's essentially what sludge is, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much, yeah. But it can also be an amazing fertilizer. So it's, we're just trying to help the world grow. But I think it's important because we just had that big report has come out, both from the U.S. government and also was it the New York Times or whatever did that big report where like in 10 years the climate's going to be, or 20 years it's going to be almost uninhabitable in certain places. And it's certainly not new news. But to see
we're looking at food shortages and stuff.
Yeah. To see it really in black and white, literally printed in black and white, and to say, no, guys, this isn't the 1980s where we're like, we think the ozone's going to die in 4 years. No, they're like, no, now we've had 30 years of actually learning about this stuff. And the real science is we got 10 or 20 years. Like, that's this rate, that's what's going to happen.
The cartoons have been telling us for decades to knock it off, and we didn't listen.
Yeah, and you'd think it's more of the kids, like kids that watch Star Trek grew up and were like, I'm going to go to space, and now they run NASA. And kids that watch G.I. Joe grew up and were like, I don't believe in climate change. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding about that. But no, it's true, though. I do think that more specifically, what am I thinking? Captain Planet, that's what I'm thinking of. Like, I think there are adults now who are into, on the forefront that did grow up watching Captain Planet. And we're like, no, that's been a concern of mine for a long time. I think that's really important.
And like at the time, I felt Captain Planet was a little heavy-handed, but I guess, if it changed one person's mind.
Yeah. Oh, I do think it was pretty heavy-handed. I don't think Captain Planet was all that great, but that's the rub. It's like, it's finding that balance between heavy-handedness and just kind of informing kids. Yeah. Which in that regard, I do think G.I. Joe did a pretty good job of it, where they would have these real concerns, pollution and global warming, things like that. They didn't call it that, but it's wrapped with this concept of this toy sludge, and I think that's worthy, This also came in at a time when the toy line itself was kind of dipping. If he had been one of the Cobras in like the 85, 86 era, I think he would have fit right in. He wouldn't have been as garish. He probably would have still been scarred and all that, but like his costume might have been a little less garish. And maybe the message would have went over a little better.
I think you're right. And no, speaking of toys that shoot sludge, that was kind of like they kind of predicted like what's going on now, because there's toys that actually poop now.
Oh, there are.
I hate to keep going back to the poop thing.
No, man. Hey, I'm always down with a little poop talk. Yeah, there totally are. There's like a game. It's like make the dog poop or something, and it's like a a hungry like a weird hungry hippos kind of game. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we had slime when we were kids too. Were you into He-Man at all?
Yeah.
I like He-Man. Did you have the slime pit? Yeah. Yeah, the slime pit, the big claw that trapped He-Man in place, and then you would dump the slime, and when he was covered in slime, then he would be mind controlled by Hordak. It was awesome.
Okay.
I'm sure
that was like late in the He-Man run, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was the Hordak era, so it was like the final, the end days of the He-Man line. Yeah, but
I do remember
that was
that.
awesome.
I remember seeing commercials for that. I'm like, and I always hated the smell of slime, so I was like, I will never get that toy.
It did have a funky smell. We're gonna go to commercial break here, thinking about that smell of slime man, kind of a gross, sticky, nasty.
Hey, listeners, if you're anything like me, all apologies to your family. I'm just kidding. It's likely that they made you this way. No, I'm talking about that I'm always looking for more G.I. Joe content, and I think I've found it. Stop what you're doing. Okay, don't stop listening to this podcast. Can't you multitask? And go to Facebook/Special Mission Force. Brian Wilkins is curating all kinds of wonderful, nostalgic G.I. Joe content, including new pics from his fantastic Instagram page at Special Mission Force. On his Instagram, he's taking photos of Joes out in the wild, in the real world, doing stuff. For me, the two things that stand out the most are his variety of characters that he takes pictures of, and like the depth of field in these pictures. It's just a wonderful job of directing focus for you. I think you really will enjoy his work. So like him on Facebook, follow him on Instagram and Twitter, and get ready for his website, specialmissionforce.com. He's a name to watch in the G.I. Joe game, so get on board now. Now back to the show.
Like, you could always, your hands always funked up. And then it would get caught in the joints of He-Man. I never put slime, because I never cross-pollinated my toys. I never put slime on my, like, G.I. Joes. They was only exclusively for He-Man.
Right.
Now,
G.I. Joes have those little joints and stuff you can get in them.
So now, on the show here, Cess-Pool is about to dunk, Flint into this pit of slime, but it doesn't matter if it's sludge or radioactive slime because it's 270 degrees, RD.
Holy.
Like, that's gonna just kill you outright. Like, you don't need...
Yeah, it'll cook you up real nice.
Yeah. Like, if you're gonna transform him into something, you're just gonna melt him. There's also shades of like Ra's al Ghul in his Lazarus pit too.
Maybe that suit is like heat resistant.
Oh, it better. I hope it is. So RD, if you could be a member of the Joe or Cobra team, it's one of the things I love to ask my guests on this show. What would you be? Would you be a member of the Joe or Cobra squad, or what would your specialty be, and then what would your name be? Have you given any thought to it?
I actually took a test not too long ago. You know, they have those surveys.
Yeah, like what Joe would you be? Yeah.
They throw back like a made up name for you.
Yeah.
I forgot I think he was like a snow stalker or something like that. And he's an Arctic ninja, like an Arctic commando, like Snake Eyes.
Awesome, but
just
you
the
only
snow
are operating the Arctic.
Yeah. If it's too warm, I can't ninja.
You've got the polar ninja action on lockdown.
Let's go get him.
Absolutely.
Hey, gotta be honest, maybe one out of every 5 Joe adventures take place in the snow. Like, let's be real talk here. They went in the snow a lot.
You know, there were a lot of Arctic themed GI Joes and Cobras, right?
Yeah, there really were. I love it. So you're an Arctic ninja. What's your name? Is it Snowstalker?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Snowstalker. I like it.
Okay, Snowstalker, the Arctic ninja. If you find some Cobras doing no good, and they're like, all right, we're gonna escape the Arctic. We're gonna take our adventures to a non-Arctic climate. Snowstalker's like, all right, well, I gotta let that go then. I'm good. If you can't,
or
your jurisdiction ends when the snow cap ends.
That's it, man. I only have a few years left because global warming.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're like Roscoe P. Coltrane. As soon as the Duke boys cross Hazard County, you can't chase them anymore. As soon as Cobras get off the snow belt, I'm going to get you. I don't know where you're talking like that up in the Arctic, but that's great. Well, Snowstalker, welcome to the Joe on Joe team, the Arctic Ninja.
This has got to be the place.
That's fantastic. Oh my gosh. So the Joes finally found the bomb. Now this bomb's going to explode, and it's going to release, the sludge everywhere and turn everyone into, cesspool-esque people. This is great. They don't have time to neutralize it, so they're just going to literally blow up the whole machine. They have their anti-sludge chemicals is what they had earlier in the episode. They used it from the hang gliders. They blew it up in the atmosphere and it cleaned the atmosphere a little bit. And so that's what's going on here. So instead of doing it the old-fashioned way, which is what Ozo normally does, or Clean Sweep does. I think that's actually Clean Sweep's toy that they came with. Yeah, it's actually a little bit like it's from his sweeper, his like ozone or like they called it the sweeper. It could hold and shoot water out as part of his toy. So they basically had his sweepers larger in this episode, and that's what they exploded with the chemicals that he would normally use to clean up. Flint, however, fails miserably. Yeah,
he's doing the Indiana Jones
he
run.
is he's doing a Temple of Doom run. He's absolutely fleeing this cavern Temple of Doom style as this toxic sludge is pursuing him. And we also, though, we have water that's going to chase down the sludge. I think that's what's going to neutralize the sludge because it's got water that was affected by the sweeper's goo or whatever you would want to call that.
I noticed that the sludge was converted into fertilizer.
Uh-huh.
I think it's I don't think that fertilizer is usable. I mean, unlike Mission to Mars, you can't. You're not supposed to use human fertilizer. Just to say,
no.
Just saying.
Yeah. I have a feeling maybe that's. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Maybe that's how we ended up in this current romaine lettuce fiasco. Someone used the sludge converted fertilizer to grow romaine lettuce, and here
man.
we are today.
Cheapskates.
I'll tell you. Listen, so this episode is from like 91 or 92 or something, and it was always taking place quote in the future, you know. So maybe this was predictive of what aired in October of 1991. So maybe this actually did happen today. And is how we ended up with the romaine lettuce debacle that we're in.
Wow.
That's,
I got to say, even though Flint doesn't look like Flint, he has aged really well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, 20 years later. Sure, 30 years later. All right, 27 years later. Looks fantastic. Yeah, there we go. And now the two forces just met. The sludge met the goo, and we end up with a volcanic. Although I have a feeling that mushroom cloud, quite toxic. I don't think we're out of the toxic
and it's
woods
spreading
just yet. Yeah, it really is spreading, guys. I did watch this show before, but I don't remember if they go and clean it up, and it doesn't look like they do.
These pictures are
Nah,
from
just let the rain take care of it.
The volcano
Yeah.
exploded. Then, after the first rains,
Well,
a few days later,
here we go.
you can see they've already got sprouts.
All right, so
Okay,
that's Hawk,
good.
right?
No, yeah, that's in the bomber jacket. Yeah, so it did work.
He's got like the He's got like the handkerchief boat, the handkerchief canoe hat.
He does. But he looks like his toy though. They all look exactly like their toys, which is always great. It's always great. That's not my favorite look for Flint, but he does look like his toy. And it turned into super fertilizer. So now, the world's gonna be saved, I guess. So they should thank
saved by E.
Cess-Pool,
coli.
maybe?
This is Flint.
Yeah, E. coli. Yeah, the world is saved by killer romaine lettuce. Well, RD, that's it, man. What'd you think?
Awesome, man. I liked it. That was fun.
It is, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? It depends on how you approach it. If you approach it with the intention of having fun, then it's fantastic. But if you're gonna pick it apart like I do, like I usually would do, then
Yeah, the
it
picking
becomes a
apart
chore.
stuff that gets old. I think I try on this. I try to be as positive as I can because the picking apart stuff. There's always something like funny or like I can't believe they did that. But for the most part, you're like these guys were working hard. They had their hearts in the right place, and let's look for what they were trying to do. And then when you get to the choices where like the ones that you chose to have metalhead's elderly European grandma show up and whip Cobra into shape with like her cooking. That's something worthy of ridicule because that is a conscious choice.
That said
they
Sunbow
made.
Productions. Did you see that?
I did, and I have an answer, listeners, for some of you, longtime listeners. When we first started doing the DIC stuff, we were like, oh yeah, DIC, all DIC, all DIC. And then we started season 2, we started seeing the Sunbow logo. Well, I had the opportunity to run into Mr. Chuck Patton, who I am efforting to get on the show before we wrap up. And he told me that that Sunbow still owned a stake in the show, and they still were overseeing the production of it. And that's why the logo would show up on this season, because they stepped back in, and apparently, according to him, they got a piece of everything. So they never really relinquished ownership, we'll say, but they did farm out the production. And so I think also that is why this season is better, because I think Sunbow stepped in and was like, well, if we're going to put our name on it, it's going to be a little bit better.
You guys got to step up your game.
Yeah. So and that's sort of what we surmised on the first episode when we saw that, is like, well, maybe they stepped in because the quality did go up. And he confirmed for me that Sunbow had at least a financial hand in everything that they did all the way through the DSC stuff. So that would be why their production logo was on there. And now you know, and knowing is half the battle, RD.
Thank you.
So is this going to make you seek out maybe some more G.I. Joes, maybe some DSC eras, and watch any more of those in addition to your awesome Series 6 Galaxy Rangers podcast? So it's okay to say no.
All right.
Oh, man. Well, this is fantastic, man. Thank you so much for being on the show.
listening.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much for being on my show, RD. This has been a real treat.
Thank you for having me, man. This has been a lot of fun, and we can't wait to have you on the Series 6 podcast.
Yeah, let's set it up soon. I love to do it. I want to get into Galaxy Rangers. I want to learn more about them. I want to watch their cartoons. So I love it, man.
Definitely.
Well, RD, thanks again, listeners. Remember to check out the Series 6 podcast. Tell them Joe and Joe sent you. And now you, Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.